Good afternoon, everyone. We're called to order our Public Works Committee, April 10th, 5 o'clock. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Felker,
Here.
Vice Chair DeMoro,
Here.
Councilmember Edson. Here. And Councilmember Pryor. Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. First item is approval of the agenda. Have a motion?
Chair,
Councilmember Edson?
I move to approve the agenda for the Public Works Committee for Monday, April 10th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Edson and a second by Councilmember Pryor to approve the agenda as presented. Have a roll call, please. Aye.
Vice Chair DeMoro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor. Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved. Any public comments today? Public comments? No? Okay. Very good. All right, we'll move on to our items of business. Item 5A, 2023-5525. Do I have a motion for approval of the committee action letter?
Chair,
Councilmember Edson.
I move to approve the action letter for the Public Works Committee for March 13th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Edson and a second by Councilmember DeMorro to approve the 2023 March 13th Public Works Committee action letter. Any discussion? And seeing none, I'll call for a roll call, please.
Chairman Felker,
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMoro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor. Aye.
Okay, that action letter is approved. Our first item is TMP-2575. Mr. Persing, going to speak to us today?
Good evening, afternoon, evening,
Close,
council.
right? Could either one.
John Persing, Staff Engineer, Public Works. This item is for the professional engineering services for the Sampson Road Bridge replacement and stormwater improvement project. This is a project we got ARPA funds for, so the funds will cover construction and design on this project. We'll be replacing the bridge goes over Mouse Creek between Sampson and Hook Road. It's an old wood deck bridge now. We'll be upgrading it so it'll be 2 lanes, have pedestrian facilities, as well as some stormwater quality BMPs and a little bit of stream restoration in the area. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from the committee?
I have a question.
Councilmember Edson.
So why at this particular time?
The ARPA funding became available, I think, in this fall, and we applied and got it. So now we have funding for it. The bridge that's there now, I believe, was a temporary bridge that was put in around 2001. It was intended to be a temporary bridge until funding became available, and the can got kicked until now, and so now we got the ARPA funds to cover it, so
Okay.
now we're going after it.
Yeah, I just wondered because it seems like the development out there is really slow right now. I mean, is that right?
Yeah, so the reason it was initiated now is just simply because of the opportunity with the ARPA funds. The state had an open competitive grant application period that was this last fall. This happened to be one of only really a couple projects that we felt could compete. This particular area is adjacent to an environmental justice tract, and that was one of the scoring criteria for the projects that were submitted throughout the state. And so with that, we've applied for what could be the maximum amount of grant opportunity. There's no local match required. And I feel really fortunate that actually we did get some money. I really didn't think going into it the city of Lee's Summit would qualify for anyone. We don't have that kind of debt. We don't have the other financial criteria they were looking for subsidy to local jurisdictions and stormwater improvements.
Okay, thank you. No, I was just wondering because I was looking at the map and going, wait, I just wanted to make sure we weren't building something out there that was maybe not needed, you know?
Oh, sure.
But, yeah, okay, thank you.
Other questions from the committee? So, 2 questions. So one is really confirmation. So when we've talked about ARPA monies, we're not connecting this to the 10 million. That's ARPA money that we allocated initially for PRI North, but that we're using now to be able to make sure we use it right. And this is not part of that.
Correct. There's actually a lot of different buckets of ARPA funds, if you will, some that flowed directly to the city, some that flowed to the state for further appropriation. as part of this one call, and it's not even related to the 10.5 or $10 million that we received for sanitary sewer, there were also applications for sewer and water projects in this tranche that was released last fall.
Okay. And, sorry, so I think you just said this, so this was one of, there were other applications, but this is one that we actually got approved. Are there others we think?
We only submitted one application under the stormwater eligible programs, and this we thought would compete best, and fortunately it did. It was also a bridge, like as Mr. Persing said, it's a one-lane old wooden bridge with a structure underneath that is in need of replacement. It's actually a temporary bridge. It's been in for over 20 years. The other applications, I don't have the information offhand. I think Mr. Thorne may have some additional background on whether or not we competed on the sanitary or water, but I think those might have been influenced by the grant that was received already, the $10 million that you spoke to.
We did compete on, for sanitary sewer and stormwater, or I'm sorry, sanitary sewer and water grant monies. We were precluded from the sanitary sewer because of legislative authorization. They didn't want us to compete for the other. That, and they had 370 applications and gave out like 35 grants. On the water side, similar situation. They had over 300 applications and only issued like 30 some of them. And they were very much centered around low income situations, environmental justice situations and that kind of stuff, which at least Summit doesn't score very terribly well on. We did pick areas that we thought we could get the best points on, and actually we scored probably better than what we thought we did, but the money just did not go very far.
Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. So given the proximity to the landfill, the proposed landfill, it will not, dump trucks and trash trucks won't be able to utilize it, will they? If the landfill passes, will there be signage and everything up so they can't?
The bridge that would be designed and constructed won't be weight restricted, so beyond any other statutory limitations on weight of vehicles and heavy loads, no, there's no special circumstance here on what's being put in on Sampson.
You think it'll become a thoroughfare for if that landfill passes?
No, in my opinion, no, I don't. I don't think you're going to see the distribution of landfill-generated traffic using Sampson Road. They will really focus their impacts on M150 highway. Really, it's actually kind of distant from ideal locations for landfills, being in proximate location to interstate highways and junctions. So to use Sampson Road would take them further away from the interstate, which is a regional landfill's origin and destination.
Okay, I just don't want to make it easier for them at all to, anything easier for them. Okay, thank you.
Maybe you should just ask, can we build a bunch of things around there so they can't do anything? Okay, thank you, Mr. Persing. I have maybe one more question, which is, and this is kind of just built into the packet, that the bridge replacement, we're just talking about engineering costs, so the bridge replacement is $4.5 million, and but we were granted a portion of it, so I assume we're gonna have to allocate monies from somewhere else to cover the total cost.
So that $4.5 million was intended to cover engineering costs as well as construction costs. We were awarded 3.7 something million of it. We are still eligible for the rest of the funding pending how the other funds with other communities, if there's any left over, will be reallocated, and we'll be at the top of the list for those reallocations.
So it's possible we'll get all the way up to the 4.5 million,
It is
but right now
possible.
it's just at 3.7.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
That's correct, and we'll have the improvements designed within our budget
Yeah.
as available. So we haven't identified outside sources, local sources to make that full project happen. The amount awarded is certainly enough to replace the bridge. It's just the additional improvements beyond the bridge that we're able to accomplish with the amount of grant.
The kind that Councilmember Pryor wants to put on the bridge, apparently, keep the big trucks from going nails to pop. No, sorry. I can't have too much fun with this. It's wooden bridge. All right. Okay. Mr. Persing, thank you for entertaining us and letting us be entertained a little bit on that one. Any other comments or questions or information to share. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, I think I would entertain a motion on this matter.
Chair,
Councilmember Pryor.
I move to advance to council ordinance number TMP 2575, an ordinance approving the award of RFQ number 2023-041 for professional engineering services for Sampson Road Bridge replacement and stormwater improvements to Wilson and Company, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $584,535 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Pryor, second by Councilmember Edson to advance TMP-2575 to full city council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? The committee? Seeing none, we have a roll call, please.
Chairman Felker.
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMoro.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Edson.
Aye.
The matter advances to council. Thank you, committee. TMP 2557. Mr. Thorne.
Good evening, Jeff Thorne, Deputy Director, Lee Summit Water Utilities. Bring before you tonight an ordinance awarding a bid of a project for cathodic protection to Weideman Inc. This is a programmatic project for us, meaning you see some of this basically every year out of us. We did increase our budget for cathodic protection from $500,000 a year to $1 million a year. We do find that the payoff for what we're doing here is showing up really well, and we need to further protect our metallic lines in the city. I'll take you back to your high school chemistry.
I was hoping you would. This is what I
I'm sure
wanted.
you
You
all
knew I
rec-
wanted it.
I'm sure you all recall redox reactions, or maybe just the neighbor's rusty car in their driveway. What we're doing is providing a purer metal to rust away than our own pipes. So what we do is we go along the pipes every 40, 50 feet. We dig a small hole, attach a wire to a zinc anode, and then the anode gets eaten away and the pipe is protected. That's the gist of it. We do this all over the city. The way Lee Summit was constructed, the way it grew, the number of metallic pipes in the ground and our corrosive soils through the 70s, 80s, and 90s are troublesome for us, and we've seen an increase in break rate and a loss of level of service. What this does is extend the life of those pipes, as these anodes they're sacrificial. They put in the ground and they just go away. But as they go away, they extend the life of those pipes 15, 20 years. That allows us time to get to those pipes for the replacement schedule, not lose them prematurely. Weideman has done this kind of work for us in the past successfully, so we recommend award. Any questions?
There we go. Any questions from the committee? I was hoping you'd give me that, so that was great. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on this matter.
Chair.
Councilmember Edson.
I move to recommend to council for approval TMP-2557, an ordinance awarding the bid for project number 976-31683 for the cathodic protection program FY23 to Wiedemann Inc. in the amount of $993,300 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Okay, I have, excuse me, motion by Councilmember Edson and a second by Councilmember DeMoro to advance TMP 2557 to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd have a roll call, please.
Chairman Felker.
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMoro.
Aye.
Councilmember Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Okay, the matter advances. Mr. Thorne, we're moving on to TMP 2617.
Yes, 2617 is an ordinance to award a bid for a water main construction along Langsford and Milton Thompson. This is part of our upsize program. It is funded through water tap fees. So when a building is built, depending on the meter size, you pay for connection to that line. That helps support system development, capacity improvements, things of that nature. So when we take a water line and we improve the size of it so we can move more water across the city, that doesn't come out of user rates, your bill every day, but over the cost of the the development of the city itself and what the building of the house costs and the use of that capacity costs. This work will start at roughly Summit Mill on Langsford Road and then follow Milton Thompson south and tie into a 16-inch water line, which was put in with the Blackwell interchange program. We're doing this because we end up with, one, we've seen development out in that direction, and two, there's we serve all the way out to Highway 7, as once upon a time we merged with Water District 14. Our crossing out to serve into that area is there at Smart Road. So if we lose a single line going out there, it causes a problem in serving those customers, and this helps support that and solidify that, as well as provide us a backfeed if something happens along Blackwell or any of that area. The contractor on this is Infrastructure Solutions. They're also doing our work on the McClendon Ditch project, and they've done several other projects for us. We've had pretty good luck with them. We got an excellent number on this bid. Was really happy to see that. It's a little bit closer to some of the numbers we saw pre-COVID, so that's good. We recommend award.
Questions from the committee? Only question I have, and maybe this falls outside of the city limits?
It does.
Okay, and so you just explained that in terms of how we service that area because of our prior connection with the adjoining water district? Was that what your explanation?
We merged and took over Water District 14, so the water utility service area goes all the way out to Highway 7.
Got it. Okay, good for us to know. Anything else? Any questions further from the committee?
I just have to make a comment. Looks like you got a good number of bidders on here.
Yeah.
So that's
We
good.
did, yeah. We've been really happy with what we're seeing, and I think you'll see the same as we start looking at the Colburn Road and some of these others. While development has slowed up a little bit in terms of our residential stuff, I think we've seen some, that helped us, and the contractors are a little hungrier, and they're coming after things for us, so that's good.
Good. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I would entertain a motion on TMP 2617.
Chair.
Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. I move to advance to council for approval TMP number 2617, an ordinance awarding the bid for project number 767-C for the Langsford and Milton Thompson Water Main Upsize Program to Infrastructure Solutions LLC in the amount of $1,059,880 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Okay, I have a, a motion by Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Edson to advance TMP 2615 to the full council with the recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? I think I said there's a wrong number, TMP-2617. Any further discussion? Now we'll have a roll call, please.
Chair Felker.
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMorro.
Aye.
Councilmember Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Okay, the matter advances. We're now moving on to TMP-2615, and I'm wondering if we should start allocating time based on the amount of dollars we have. And this would be the longest one. Are you ready for that, Mr. Kohler? So, no, we won't hold you to that. Mr. Kohler, we're happy to hear from you on this TMP 2615.
So this is an ordinance awarding the bid of the Colburn Road project to Clarkson Construction Company. We had 4 responsive bids for the opening on the 28th. Clarkson was the lowest. They were at 0.4% above the engineer's estimate, which is pretty good for as large as this is. We did get MoDOT, due to federal funds, we had to get MoDOT's concurrence on the award. I ended up getting that today at like 2 o'clock, so if you got any questions, short and sweet.
Here we go. How long have we been working on this project?
4 years.
Yeah.
Had about almost a 2-year delay with SHPO.
It's quick. I mean,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Seems quick.
In some ways, yeah.
Glad
And-
you think so.
I kind of jumped the gun. Any questions from the committee before I have a couple?
I have
Councilmember
one.
Edson.
I have one sort of related, unrelated. I noticed there's a lot of land clearing going on between Colburn and 470. So is that road improvements or is that for the project?
Well, the south side was, the trees were cleared there up close to the road for Evergy to relocate. But the stuff that's going on is Discovery Park.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right. Because I wondered how wide is the road gonna be? You know? Like, all right, thank you, Chair.
Yep.
Other questions from the committee? So so we're starting here in like 60 days or something. June is what I see. Sounds exciting. Question I have is, when we've had road projects before, trying to remember if we've already seen this, but do we have somewhere online where folks could see what it's gonna look like? I mean, I'm thinking of how we often envisioned other projects where I'm close to Pryor Road, and we had, illustrations and so forth. Is there gonna be a similar publicly available way to see that?
So there is a project webpage that they're free to visit. They can see the scope of the project as well as the overall design. And with that, if there's actual more specific questions that perhaps somebody is interested in, they can reach out to Public Works and we can put them in contact with our construction project management office.
Okay. All right. And I don't have anyone who's asking just yet, but I assume some might. Question? Okay. I would entertain a motion, everybody, or members of the committee, on the TMP 2615.
Chair,
Councilmember Edson?
I move to recommend to council for approval TMP-2615, an ordinance awarding the bid for project number 569 for the Colburn Road improvements from M350 Highway to Douglas Street to Clarkson Construction Company in the amount of $25,999,806.77 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Edson, second by Councilmember Pryor, to advance TMP 2615 to the full council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? I'll just make a comment. This is a big deal. This is a big project, and that's going to make a big difference. And obviously, with what we see happening nearby, that's going to be great. So, entertain a roll call, please.
Chairman Felker,
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMoro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Okay, the matter advances. We're on to TMP 2614. Mr. Kohler.
Yeah, so this is a ordinance to authorize the Spire facility relocation agreement and their reimbursement, estimated reimbursement cost. Their pipeline is currently in their own private easement, and they're basically in conflict with the road project, so we got to get them to move in like 3 different areas. Talk to them. Supposedly their contract's going to be out, or their contractor can be out there May 1st if we get this moving and get it signed and then get them check cut. It has to be done before they'll go out there, so. I mean, if they get started by May 1st, they're going to start in our phase 1 of the road project, so that part would be done and they won't cause delays or extra costs for us. So that's about it on that one. Got any questions?
Questions from the committee? Sorry, this is actually probably on the bigger project. I think it said 630 or some odd days for project duration, is that right? So 2-year project, roughly.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Okay, seeing no questions from the committee, I'd entertain a motion.
Chair.
Councilmember Pryor?
Thank you. I move to advance the council for approval TMP number 2614, an ordinance authorizing execution of an agreement for facility relocation by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Spire, Missouri, Inc. in the amount of $535,634 for the Colburn Road improvements from M350 Highway to Douglas Street and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Pryor, second by Councilmember Edson. to advance TMP 2614 to the full council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion from the committee? Seeing none, we have a roll call, please.
Chairman Felker,
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMorro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson,
Aye.
and Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Okay, the matter advances. Thank you, committee. Thank you, Mr. Kohler. On to TMP 2616. Mr. Schmaker.
Good evening. Vince Schmaker, Project Manager, at least Summit Public Works. First tonight, I have for you the annual mill and overlay contract. This year, the low bidder was Amino Brothers. We're looking at 39 miles, lane miles of mill and overlay, broken into 14 different areas. Any questions? I got a whole bunch of details I can go through, but you've heard this, I don't know how many you want me to go through.
Well, I always think, what do people want to know? I mean, yes, and thank you. You have kept us very much informed, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't want to slug you through something you don't need to. I think as a city, people appreciate seeing and the new road, the new look, and knowing that they have a nice blacktop to drive on. So,
Right,
we have a question. Councilmember Edson.
So it always feels like we're always catching up on this. I mean, we've got a lot of road. Do we need to expand this so we're doing more every year? And I know the answer to how do we do that is going to be money, right? But it always feels like we're behind.
that could be, because it feels like we are. I mean, to the level of mill and overlay here, where we actually do remove asphalt surface and put new surface down, is in excess of 20 years. But between that time, we're also doing the crack seal and the surface seal. Overall, actually I have a picture here, I think. Can I get an overhead?
While you're looking, and this doesn't include curbs, right?
No, this is strictly overlay. This is a map of what we've done in the last 5 years. It's just to show that, doing between 30 and 40 miles a year, we are covering a lot of the city. And we're doing more beyond, when I say we're behind, we are doing more than just keeping up. Our roads around town are, I feel, in pretty good shape compared, a lot of municipalities around. We have a dedicated funding source, or a half-cent transportation sales tax. A lot of cities don't have. Yes, there's going to be roads in various stages, some that I would like to have done this year that we couldn't. But overall, I would say we're doing a good job of treading water and not falling farther behind.
Yeah. And my comment, just so you know, wasn't on city staff. It was really,
Yeah.
what can we together work to get more done if we can,
Right, and as you said, it's funding.
Yeah.
We're paying right at $95,000 a lane mile, so that's almost $200,000 per 2 lanes of city street.
Wow. Okay. George is right behind you.
So,
George Banger, city engineer. One of the things that we've have implemented over the last several years is improving our material standards as well as our pavement design standards. So the pavements that are being built by new development now are generally thicker. We've added a layer of aggregate base and require some sort of subgrade improvement. So what we're seeing out of those roads is a much longer design life. Those are actually, they're estimated to last about 35 years. The old standard was a 20-year design life, but some of them we didn't see that because it was just asphalt on unimproved clay soil. And so that's a lot of the things that that you'll see in this program or those roads. Last year, from 22 to fiscal years 22 to 23, we increased the funding or the scope of this by 10%. We had the inflation added, but we also had, just for the lane miles, we added about 10% last year. And if you look in our CIP, we're starting to add or increase to accommodate for inflation. So those are some things we're doing to try to stay ahead of this. And then as Vince mentioned, we're seeing real good success out of our microsurface program and crack seal program. Because when we get those in early and in a timely manner, it really extends the life of pavement. I mean, there's some neighborhoods we have been surface sealed 3 times and they're 40 years old and have yet to be overlaid because they happen to be holding up well in some cases. Others, not so much. And then the other thing is we added that local road reconstruction program to try to get some of these streets that are beyond overlay. Now, that's going to be a very slow, process to work through that just because of the cost of rebuilding the street versus maintaining. So those are some of the things we've done to this point to try to alleviate the burden going forward. So right now, I think we're close to about a 20-year cycle on mill and overlay.
Oh, okay, all
I
right.
mean, we're ramping it down. It was 30 years a few years ago. I think we're down to like 20, 23 at this point, and so we hope to keep pushing that a little bit.
It always just feels like we're doing a little bit here and a little bit there, so from a macro perspective, you're just like,
Well,
just worn out.
I encourage a little bit what we can do now. And, Vince is showing this graph here on the pavement. If you look at our curb program and curb replacement that we've done over the last probably, 15 plus years, we're about 45% of the curb replaced that we think needs to be done. Yes, it's a long, slow process, but it does add up over time.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Great questions. Great. Appreciate those responses. I have just really one follow-up, which is and I believe this might have been something you've certainly addressed in the past, and I just don't remember, but what procedure do you follow in terms of actually evaluating? Is it in terms of evaluating which roads have priority that will be on this year's and next year's? Is it kind of stacked, and do you see it?
It's kind of stacked. I keep, in one of our programs, I keep like a 3 to 4 year looking forward on the pavement. Further out you are, of course, the farther more it could shift. But we do a inspection on the roads. Roads get inspected every 4 years. We got the city broke into quadrants. So we use the program's called Paver, developed through the Corps. And then we can look at that on a map, and then when we go in, if we're doing an area that we see is gonna need overlaid, if the area also qualifies for curb, we work to get that done the year in advance. This year, of the 14 areas, 9 of them had the curb replaced last year.
And that's the order, curb first, then overlay.
Then overlay.
Yep.
Because when we remove the curb, we take a piece of asphalt out in front of the curb, and we want to get that back as tight as we can with the new overlay. And if we have to make any curb modifications as far as the alignment of the curbs.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Chair,
Councilmember Edson?
I move to recommend to council for approval TMP-2616, an ordinance awarding the bid for project number 791-OV for the mill and overlay FY24 program to Amino Brothers, Inc. in the amount of $3,825,766.45 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Edson, second by Councilmember DeMauro to advance TMP 2616 to the full council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion from the committee? Seeing no discussion, let's have a roll call.
Chair Filker.
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMauro.
Aye.
Councilmember Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
All right, that matter advances, and we are marching along to item TMP 2601. Mr. Schmeger.
Yes, for my second action tonight, I have asking for approval intergovernmental agreement with Jackson County, Missouri. Part of the overlay this year is the continuation from last year on Langsford Road, roughly Blackwell to the eastern city limits. In that portion, prior to us starting to build behind the fire station right there, Langsford was pretty much split South side was Lee Summit, north side was Jackson County. We've had the same thing over on Colburn Road, and we had same thing over on Ranson Road last year, I believe it was, or the year before. So what this does is we take care, we do the whole project through, on the overlay, and then they reimburse us the $69,000 for the portion that is still within Jackson County and not Lee Summit proper. Any questions?
Nope, and I see in the packet that's being considered in the legislature at the same time, so do we know where they're at in terms of their review, or is it still to be heard there?
We are maybe 2 weeks ahead of them,
Yeah. Okay,
but the attorneys have written it up and such that we can be running simultaneously.
those smart attorneys, I tell
I
you
know
what. All right, thank you, Mr. Schmager. Any further comments? Any further questions from the committee? All right, then I would entertain a motion.
Chair,
Councilmember Pryor?
I move to advance to council PMP number 2601, an ordinance approving an intergovernmental agreement regarding cost sharing for road maintenance and overlay, and a regarding capital improvement project paid for by the city of Lee Summit and Jackson County to mill and overlay Langsford Road, west of Blackwell Road to Wildflower Drive, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same.
I would second moving this to council for approval.
Motion by Councilmember Pryor, second by Councilmember Edson to move TMP 260, sorry, I just got ahead of myself, TMP-2601 to full council with recommendation for approval. Further discussion? Hearing no discussion, and have a roll call, please.
Chairman Felker,
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMoro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson,
Aye.
and Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Okay, that matter advances. We are humming along here. TMP 2606, Mr. Anderson, good evening.
Good evening. Mike Anderson, Deputy Director of Public Works Operations, here to talk about a cooperative service agreement between the City of Lee Summit and the United States Department of Agriculture. Seems like a strange partnership for us, might be a first. This is for to conduct a wildlife hazard site visit out at the Lee Summit Municipal Airport. This is a required task as part of our Phase 2 of the master plan update. Typically, this work would have simply been handled with our aviation consultant, CMT, and a subconsultant. In this case, the ideal subconsultant to do this work is the United States Department of Agriculture, but they will not contract directly with a private engineering firm. They will only contract directly with the municipalities that need this work. And so we're doing this as part of the Phase 2 of the master plan update, so they can come out and do this work for us. It's a small amount, $1,900, and it is a reimbursable task as part of our grant for the master plan update. So this will be funneled through our the grant that we have ongoing right now with CMT, and we've already got verification from MoDOT that yes, this is a reimbursable fund, and so it's a small amount. We'll be reimbursed, and we'll find out if there's any wildlife hazards out there at the airport. So with that, be glad to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Councilmember Edson?
What do you suspect they'll find?
With the fact that we have the wildlife fence, our biggest, thing in this area is gonna be deer and things like that we should take, that's gonna be off the table. But there could be birds, migratory birds, that could be in a flight path. We don't have a history out at the airport, so I'm really not suspecting they'll find anything. This is kind of step one of a process. This is just the hazard site visit, so it's a very abbreviated study. If they find something, then they'll recommend a wildlife hazard assessment, much greater detail. I don't suspect that we'll even get to the second stage. We'll need a more detailed assessment.
Weren't there rumors of turtles that migrated across the airport property? I heard that from other council members, past council members.
I'm gonna have to be flying pretty low to hit a turtle. But,
I couldn't understand it either, but if they're going across the
if they're going across
runway,
runways, yeah,
yeah.
that would definitely, you don't want to get those sucked up in your engine, so, I'm not aware of a turtle problem.
Oh, okay.
Our guys are pretty quick, I think they chase them down, so.
I'll write down the council members' names who told me that. Maybe I'm gullible, that could be it. That's probably, all right, thank you.
That
Thank
joke
you,
is
Chair.
now finally up. After all these years, they finally got you on it. Okay, thank you, Councilmember Edson. And I think you answered it. I was like, well, what's the next step, which is, again, if there's a potential for another further assessment, but you're not thinking that's
I'm
likely.
not anticipating that.
Well, and just so you know, you broke the rule. This is only $1,900. You took way too long, given our earlier comments about how long you're supposed to take.
I think I went longer than the $26 million one, actually.
Very good. Okay, well, I'd entertain a motion, or any other comments, Mr. Anderson? Nope. Okay. Any other questions from the committee? And seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Chair,
Councilman Redson.
I move to recommend to council for approval TMP-2606, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a cooperative service agreement by and between the city of Lee Summit, Missouri, Lee Summit Municipal Airport, and the United States Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services, Wildlife Services in the amount of $1,900 to conduct a wildlife hazard site visit and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Edson and a second by Councilmember DeMauro, to advance TMP 2606 to full council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd have a roll call, please.
Chair Felker,
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMorro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson,
Aye.
and Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
All right. TMP 2606 advances. We're moving now to TMP 2618. Ms. Sperry.
Good evening, Susan
Hello.
Berry, City Traffic Engineer, here tonight requesting a change to Chapter 29, Code of Ordinances, amending Appendix B, Schedule of Stopping, Standing, and Parking Restrictions for certain streets and segments. This specifically refers to downtown. We were approached by the Downtown Lee Summit Main Street organization. There's just sections of Main Street that are unrestricted compared to everywhere else in downtown is 2-hour parking. And they requested to change these stretches of Main Street to match the rest of downtown. Consistency, long-term parking is still available in any city lots and in the garage. So one of the concerns that I had was Amtrak long-term parking, and we have revised the signage for the Amtrak, and we now direct them to over by the bridge office space. Any questions, or I have a visual if you wanted to see?
Yeah, let's do a visual.
Okay.
It's always good to see pictures. I like picture books and picture council meetings.
Go this way. Okay. So the first stretch is in front of the Chamber of Commerce on Southeast Main. And then on Southwest Main, it's the east side of Southwest Main by the Amtrak station, and then between 3rd and 4th, that entire stretch. Right now, that's unrestricted parking. It'll all be switched to 2-hour parking, with the exception of 2 ADA accessible spaces at the train station. That will be unrestricted time.
I'm gonna have to move my car. I was keeping it there to make sure the turtles weren't crossing. But,
Well, in the downtown merchants, we're noticing that some of the employees of the shops were parking there for 8 hours a day. And so that takes up spaces for people that are just doing their shopping. And with the increase in items on the west side of the tracks, it's becoming more of an issue to have more parking available for all those new merchants on the west side of the tracks.
Councilmember Pryor?
Thank you. Can you show me just where the city lots are? I know the parking garage, but where are the other city lots?
Yes, I can.
Thanks.
Hard to see on this. Market Street, right here. These 2 lots right here, I think it's just one lot, is a public lot. And then at 4th and Market, right? 4th and Market is a public lot? No, 4th and. Yep. Yep. And the one by the old post office, there's actually a sidewalk that connects from there down next to the Reese Nichols building.
And is the 2-hour parking, is it between, I don't remember specific times? I think it's a good idea to do this.
It's Monday
but
through
is it-
Friday. Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, 5? I think it's in the packet. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, perfect.
It's going to match the rest of downtown.
Yeah, I didn't know what that time frame was
Yeah,
either,
there's
but,
no restriction on the weekends.
oh, okay, perfect, thank you.
I know Councilmember DeMoro has a question.
I just, real quickly, I realize you're talking about a specific area, but we still have 3rd Street social parking lot, and then the Vogue, we still have spaces in the Vogue too, just for.
Yeah,
Councilmember
there's
Pryor's
quite a few
information.
other parking lots, and I might have even missed one here a little bit. But yeah, I think I was just trying to locate those closest to this change in non-restricted to 2-hour restricted within proximity, but there are several others.
Councilmember Edson? Is that, you're good on the, you're good? Okay, so then my only question is how we pass this, we actually will go to council, and it's immediately effective? Is that correct? There's not like a delay?
No,
Once
it's
council-
immediately.
Okay. And then number 2 is, you mentioned a number of it seems like a number of those that were parking were actually employees of local businesses. So I agree with this conceptually, and I think it works. Have those businesses, are they aware that this is a change that's about to happen? Do you know?
I know downtown Main Street has
Does Mr.
had
Rogers-
conversations. Would you like to speak?
Would you? You're welcome to.
And while Mr. Rogers comes up, the effective date is then upon passage and the signs are installed. So we have to make sure that it's properly signed, and then I'm sure police will go through some education prior to just issuing citations.
Got it.
Yeah, this was discussed at our design committee, and not all of the businesses downtown are aware of this change, but the request initially came from property owners along Southwest Main, so west of the tracks, that many of the tenants of those buildings were getting new businesses and new dining options over there, that they're the ones that raised the concern first, that this was the only area downtown that didn't have 2-hour parking. And so they kind of felt with turnover coffee shop, restaurants, all wanting to see that 2-hour parking added in there. So we'll work with the city on making sure more awareness comes out. I know our parking enforcement officer downtown will also be, doing a lot of education on the foot. But yeah, so I think there's a good available public lots for those employees to shift to. They located 2 of them here on the map, but there's actually, next to the chamber building, more parking there too, there, and then of course the garage. So there's a considerable amount of public lots that will be accessible for those employees. And as I said, this is during the daytime too, so any after hours concerns, that wouldn't affect those employees if they felt they needed to park closer to an establishment, so.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Any further questions from the committee? Barry, any further comments?
Nope.
Okay. I would entertain a motion on TMP 2618.
Chair,
Councilmember Pryor.
thank you. I move to advance to council for approval TMP 2618, an ordinance amending Chapter 29, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lee Summit, Missouri by amending Appendix B, Schedule of Stopping, Standing, and Parking Restrictions for certain streets and segments of streets located in the City of Lee Summit.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Edson to advance TMP 2618 to the full council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion from the committee? Hearing none, entertain a roll call, please.
Chair Felker,
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMoro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Okay, TMP 2618 will advance to the council. We move on to TMP 2603. Mr. Binger, good evening.
Good evening, George Binger, City Engineer. This request is for an ordinance to approve the grant agreement for a transportation assistance program funding on the Douglas Street project. This is improving Douglas Street from Second Street north to Chipman Road. This is one of the projects that we had applied for and received grant funding in the last round. Ward Road over by Westview Elementary and the 291 interchange were other projects that received it in the funding round for fiscal years 25 and 26. This is a competitive grant and through the Mid-America Regional Council. This grant agreement, the agreement is what we complete with MoDOT to actually receive the fundings and get this into the program. So it's requesting this intergovernmental agreement to move forward with receiving the funds. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I have a question.
Councilmember Edson, please.
Yay. We've been waiting on this for a couple of years. So, does this include sidewalk improvements?
The project will include a sidewalk, a 10-foot multi-use trail on the east side that will connect to Lee McKeegan Park, and then rebuilding the road. And we expect most of the work to be completed within right away.
Okay, so between Second Street and Douglas, there's like only one storm.
That is part of the project as well. The
that-
stormwater is part of this project. Also keep in mind, we have two other projects going along concurrently. We have the Olive and Orchard project, which is in the same watershed as this project. So we're actually trying to coordinate the stormwater design with this project and that project. And then at the intersection here at Second and Douglas ties into the system that will be receiving water from the market, down the Green Street Plaza project, the downtown market plaza. So they're all being kind of coordinated on the design side to address the stormwater.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember DeMauro.
Thank you, Chair. George, what kind of stormwater inlets are these going to be? And the reason I ask is because I was just recently educated by Karen, the difference in stormwater inlets. And
We're not that far along in the design. Right
Okay.
now, we're still in concept, so we're kind of identifying sizing the system, and then the inlets are determined when you get into the detailed design, like, how much water, gutter spread do we have, spacing of the inlets, and then we'll size them from there.
But would it be possible that any of these be the grates? She had a word for it, but I can't remember what.
Well, there's again, it depends on the situation. We have our standard curb inlet, which is generally the most efficient. That's where the box will actually sit outside the curb. Sometimes we have utility conflicts. We do a reverse inlet where the actual structure is under pavement. And then the graded inlets is sometimes used where, sometimes that's used. It's not preferred because they tend to clog with leaves, so it becomes an operational issue. If you call out here on Second Street, when we had the big rain event last year, part of the issue was we had a graded inlet that got clogged. So that is an issue. But they can be installed. Some places it is appropriate to use a graded inlet. So that'll be determined during the actual design phase.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. Will this help the flooding on the east side of Douglas at all?
When you mean just along the road itself?
I mean, just the whole area? Yeah, but road, just the whole area.
Generally speaking, it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to solve problems off alignment, like further east, several hundred feet east, things like that, because it's, depending on how the watersheds align, but the basic premise is going to be do no harm, so that as we do this, the road will not cause any additional flooding. It may resolve some issues. It's easier to evaluate along the corridor, because that's really the limits of our survey and our design. Or it's basically along the homes and properties that are along Douglas. If we start moving off of that corridor, it's really hard to evaluate.
I think maybe the question you're asking is, like some of the properties and the yard flooding that we've heard up closer to the park, this project wouldn't have any impact on that. The scope of the project doesn't extend really beyond the corridor itself to go do stormwater improvements off location.
And then also, I know like on Forest, there's a few yards that flood, so the forest that goes into Douglas, there's always standing water, so will it affect any of those? I mean, like, will it help any of those?
If there's properties adjacent to Douglas, there's a great possibility that, yeah, we could address some of those as we work the grading into the road and capture the stormwater. But if it's property that's not contiguous to the Douglas corridor, no, it won't be impacted.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? I think Councilmember DeMauro really just wanted to know if turtles would fit. No, I'm just teasing. Okay, no further questions from the committee, no further comments, Mr. Binger?
The only thing I was gonna add was we do have a public meeting coming up for this. I have to look at my calendar. I believe it's April 26th, a Wednesday. And that's the concept plan. That is, let's see, yes, April 26th. And it'll be in the late afternoon, evening time, but but that is the conceptual phase for this project.
Thank you. Councilmember Pryor?
Thank you. How were people notified about the meeting, or how?
Generally, the notification is through our website and some sort of our normal communication channels. And then the other component that we have in this is the online forum. So we'll have an in-person public meeting, but we'll have the plans out for review so people can view them online on the project website.
Yeah, we'll work through the Creative Services Division to make sure there's public announcements, and I'll cover some of those in roundtable. We have more than just the one public meeting coming up.
Okay, you guys don't mail anything to the houses within close proximity, no?
Not at this early stage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. See no further comments. I'd entertain a motion.
Chair,
Councilmember Edson.
I would recommend we send to council for approval TMP-2603, an ordinance approving a transportation alternatives program funding agreement between the city of Lee Summit, Missouri and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission related to the public improvement project designated as a federal project number TAP-3001006, complete street improvements Douglas Street, Chipman Road to 2nd Street within the city of Lee Summit, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
Motion to advance TMP 2603 by Councilmember Edson, a second by Councilmember DeMauro. Further question from the committee? Further discussion, I should say. Seeing none, have a roll call, please.
Chair Felker,
Aye.
Vice Chair DeMauro,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Okay, the matter advances. Now on to our 2023-5554. Mr. Binger,
Let me try this again.
we thought we gave you enough of a runway there with our reading.
Just trying to read under my glasses here. So, okay. All right. Good evening, George Binger, City Engineer again. This is a brief introduction to our FY24 Capital Improvement Plan. What you should have received in your packet was this executive summary for this plan, which would just kind of give the overview of our capital improvement plan. Now, everything I'm discussing tonight is subject to change because of the no tax increase bond issue passed, so we had to have this done to get into the packet ahead of time. But this is kind of give you an update where we're at and let everyone know that the CIP is now out for public comment. Again, this is kind of an overview of the process. We are kind of down in this area here at the very end of the process, but keep in mind as we get comments, that feeds back to our process going next year because we're planning on coming back in the fall to discuss some sequencing on some of the bond issue projects and then starting the FY25 process all over again. So this is where this comes into play. An example of how this worked would be the Olive and Orchard project. We received a lot of comments on that one right about this time through the public comment period. So seeing there was a significant public demand, we were able to come back to committee and say, okay, is this project a priority? And so through the fall, we were able to prioritize and sequence some funding for that. And so the following year, we were able to roll that into the CIP. So where are we at? Again, this is a planning document, so we look at it 5 years. It is fiscally constrained. It includes these various categories. And then locally, we're looking at projects greater than $75,000 will be listed in the capital improvement plan. Now, we say projects, this could also be programs. For example, facilities has the building equipment replacement program. The individual projects are fairly small, but the whole budget for the year is about $600,000. So you'll see that listed as a program. And then we also have the definition here by state. And this is where we get into, this is kind of a different process, where we have the budget process, then we also have the planning process, and then we have to meet some of the statutory requirements. So where we're at now is this is 17 projects, plus this does not include the bond issue projects that we're looking at adding. I'm sorry, 17 projects that were, take my glasses off, I can read. 17 projects were completed as of June 30th, 2022, the end of the fiscal year. And that completion was $16.7 million. We've added 21 new projects in this document. At this time, that does not include the no tax increase bond issue projects that were recently approved. So there'll be some additional projects added to this, as well as some additional money. Then we will be updating the CIP as we go through the public comment. So what's actually posted online today may be different by the end of next week, early next week. The idea is that we'll have that document will be finalized by the time we reach Planning Commission on May 25th. And that's what we'll be presenting at the formal public hearing. And then, so that's where we're headed with this next. Draft number what we're looking at in 2024 is $124 million of projects. As a total for this 5-year period, $540 million. Most of our tax increase bond issue, we'll see a lot of them will be in the facilities program through the public safety bond issue and the municipal bond issue. At this point, we don't anticipate showing any transportation projects from the no tax increase bond issue, because we've fully programmed our staff to support what we have in our CIP sales tax at this point in time. One of the things that we've talked about are unfunded projects. These are ones that have been identified. We don't have a funding source. And most of these are lined out now because they were part of the recent bond issue project. We've had periodic, or actually annual, discussions on expanding transit services, adding a fixed route bus service. Typically, we'll have traffic signals. We'll have an intersection that meets warrants that pop up or that come forward every 3 years, 5 years, something like that, just as the city grows. And then we've also, the railroad spur maintenance program, we've actually, what you'll see in here in the program side is we've added a infrastructure maintenance program, or transportation infrastructure. We've taken several old programs, guardrail program, bridge maintenance, and rolled that together to form a larger program where we have some more flexibility, and that will also include the railroad spur maintenance as far as this goes. So this is what this is showing, some of our projects identified that we don't have a funding source tied to it yet. And again, you see the guardrail as a program here, and then other projects. Again, we get a lot of these through the public comment at this time. When we see a significant amount, Northeast Lakewood Way is an example. That came up as an issue. We received numerous comments on that. And so when we bring that to committee here, we get the guidance from council of if we move forward with these or not. Southeast Douglas is another one. They weren't coming in through the public comment, but we were getting calls and service requests on a regular basis. Okay, so where we're at now is we're at the just kind of the kickoff of the public comment period here with Public Works Committee, kind of giving you all the first look at this and preview. We move into the public comment period online and Planning Commission. Then we'll take that summer report that we have. We'll be submitting that to the full council as part of staff roundtable next Tuesday. And again, that's just that written report so that you as elected officials have a chance to look at that. If you're wanting to see the details, project detail sheets, we'll ask you to go to the CIP website to look at specific projects. Then we have our planning resolution, and then this is actually folded into the FY24 is folded into the budget process. So you won't see a separate CIP budget come forward. It'll be part of the city manager's budget ordinance presentation. So that's where we stand at this. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember DeMorrow.
Thank you, Chair. On one of your slides, George, you had, I don't remember exactly what it said, but there it is. Go back one. The dam-related bridge engineering repairs. Is that a specific one that is sort of out there that is possibly litigation involved?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not litigation involved. As George mentioned, we took several of these that were unfunded programs like the guardrail, the rail spur. We currently had a bridge maintenance program in the CIP, bundled those up into one that's really kind of that infrastructure for road support, if you will. Retaining walls would also fall into that. And so those were a number of the unfunded priorities that we were able to create a new program for in the CIP that you see that's going out to public view and comment. These dam-related bridges engineering repairs, it's something that we may be pursuing as part of that program through Missouri Department of Transportation has a bridge engineering assistance program. They call it the BEAT program, where they actually fund through a series of on-call engineers to go out and just do some bridge assessments. So we may end up taking advantage of that if we are successful in applying to have an engineering study performed by MoDOT on bridge, say, up in Lakewood or in Raintree to get a better idea of those conditions. That's why that was listed.
We want some questions. We're just trying to
I
come
have
up
a
with them.
comment.
Comment, please. Go ahead.
It feels really good. It looks like we've just chipped away at a whole lot of these projects. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we have, and I'll speak to some of that at roundtable, but there's still a lot of work to do, and as George mentioned, because of the passage of the no tax increase bond issue last week, we will be adding project sheets, mostly on the facilities element. With regard to the transportation question that was passed, we intend to come back to Public Works Committee and work through a conversation of sequencing that work, understanding what our resources are, what our other commitments are with the 2017 sales tax. We have some limited capacity, but some of these projects will take a while to develop. And with the road projects in particular, the series of 7 projects that are out there that we had committed to do, you'll start to see those evolve into the CIP in future years, but it's unlikely that you'll see any of those projects start in this coming fiscal year 24. The only one of the transportation projects you'll probably see incorporated would be our sidewalk gaps, because we already have a program for sidewalk gaps. We'd just be moving more money, more of those bond monies into that program to deliver more sidewalk earlier.
And going back to the public comment period, so you're putting this on the website and there will be a comment here or something like that?
Yes, it'll be on the city website, and we will have, and when those comments are posted, they get emailed to staff, and then we take that and we'll come back, when we come back to council, we'll have the comments and then generally a staff response to it, so you'll be able to see all the comments that we receive.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Redson. Mr. Bingham, let me just ask this one more time, and you've more or less said it again. What we have in front of us now, both as a summary and the actual CIP, is going to be further modified after you kind of reshuffle some things with the no tax increase bond fund. So we're going to see this again. We won't necessarily, well, can you go back to your timeline? We're not going to see this again in committee, right?
Correct.
Okay, so our next exposure to it will be if we're watching planning commission, if we're engaging in public comment or encouraging citizens to do so, and then a report to council in May. And that, at least at that point, will reflect adjustments based on the passage of the no tax increase bond.
Yeah, the
matters.
public comment closes on April 30th, and so then we'll resubmit that report to the full council showing all the comments that we've been received, and then that will be entered in as an exhibit in the planning commission public hearing.
The materials that are presented to the public during that comment period, will they be updated, based on your conversation today, for their review as well?
Yes.
Yes, those will be updated. So I don't want to, I don't want to mislead the public or yourselves in any way. We're not going to be adding projects that weren't part of the no tax increase bond issue or that were not as part of the advertisement for the public comment period. So what we'll be doing is taking as published an appendix that demonstrates all of the projects that were committed as part of the no tax increase bond issue and rolling appropriately some of those, almost all of the facility projects, into the CIP. And then the transportation projects will be sequenced by Public Works Committee and Council to be in future CIP. So you wouldn't see some new projects show up between now and the Planning Commission public hearing is what I'm trying to say. So all of the projects are there in some form. It's just whether or not they're programmed in the CIP or not.
Got it. So we'll see those. So that's actually helpful to just wrap your head around in terms of everything that we, if you will, citizens voted on, we're going to see come through this process, if you will.
Through this process. One addition to the CIP and the front-end documents also this year is really a summary of past voter-committed, financially constrained projects. So you could look back to all of those that are still with at least one outstanding project. It actually includes the 2007 CIP sales tax because we have Chipman Road that hasn't been awarded. It's still out advertised for bid. To see all the projects funded by that ballot measure and the status of those, whether they're completed, they're in the CIP, or they're not yet programmed. And so part of that big table is going to be the no tax increase bond issue of 2023 and a list of all of those project commitments and its current status.
And I'll also add that the online version has that appendix at the end with the no tax increase projects listed. It's just they're not sequenced by year.
Got it. I think I saw both. Councilmember Pryor, do you have a question, comment?
I do, thank you. How do you get, so like on Green Street, Northeast Green Street, there's a lot of areas with big sidewalk gaps. How do you get like specific sidewalks on the, how do you get them a priority?
So they would fall within the prioritization that staff working with Public Works Committee and accepted by the City Council developed. And so we look at initially the low-hanging fruit, if you will, the sidewalk gaps that are just the one block close to pedestrian generations like elementary schools or parks that rate higher in need and importance. And those are the ones we're getting first, those kind of tier one sidewalks. And then we'll move down to that tier two, which becomes the less priority, but still high priority, and it becomes a matter of its proximity to those pedestrian generators or the complexity of building that sidewalk, because we wanted those funds to go as far as possible.
The specific stretch of Green Street, it is the main route that Lee Summit Elementary School students walk to a lot of the other streets. And the reason I am asking is because I actually had some people from Lee Summit Elementary ask me what.
That one probably is one that scores well, and we could look into specific locations. If anybody in the public wants to reach out to Public Works, we can give them an idea of how that project scores or where its priority is among all the sidewalk gaps in the city. Obviously, close to an elementary school is important. However, it may be an issue of the constructability of that sidewalk is challenging because there's no curbs, there's big ditches, and it requires a total street reconstruction like an Olive or Orchard that isn't feasible just to put in sidewalk, but requires a much larger investment.
Another element in this is, Michael discussed the low-hanging fruit. So if we can, basically, instead of waiting to design all of the sections that may be a very high priority, that may take, 2 years to design and acquire right-of-way. We identified ones that we can build now. So we get those under construction in this first program, and so concurrently, we can work on the design and development of these other projects.
Thank you.
Hang on, I'm not sure.
Oh, wait, are you still going? Sorry.
I am, that doesn't I mean, I guess that doesn't make sense to me, because if it always gets put off, then it's never gonna, if it's always in the design phase.
Well,
then
the
it
key is
doesn't
not,
get done.
the key is that it's not being put off, it's programmed, so it's scheduled. So we get some of these scheduled, we've identified it, prioritized the work. It's just that, part of this is, we know we have a commitment to spend the money. I mean, the voters have approved this money. So we can either, sit here and design for, a year, 2 years and have no improvements put in place, or we can get out at one that's fairly easy to build, a bid that's fairly easy to build, to get that underway. And while that's being constructed, at the same time, we're still doing the design. So the idea is that we still get, we get some of these gaps filled in about the same time frame it would, whether we build some of these, easy to build ones first or not.
Okay, I'm surprised it hasn't been a priority, because it's been an issue for a long time, but,
Well,
okay.
I'm not saying it's not a priority. I'm just saying just some of the logistics that come into play of trying to, instead of making these easy-to-build gaps wait, because we have the funding, it is programmed. So I say it's in the schedule, so it's just a matter of trying to get work done. At the same time, we're doing some of the design and evaluation on these ones that are harder to build.
I think it's just us honestly being more selective when you have over $20 million of that top tier 1 priority gap to accomplish. And until the bond passed, we had $3.5 million. And so it's like you have your choice throughout the city of all of those, like on Green Street, but you got 20 times that, and you only have a very limited amount of funds to get work done. So we're like, what can we get done the quickest, and where can we get that money done or spent?
But if a lot of infrastructure doesn't happen in downtown, it only gets worse. So eventually it has to be addressed. But okay, thank you.
Councilmember DeMauro?
Thank you. Do we have a list that will go beyond the CIP sidewalk gap? Or are we compiling that list right now for the no tax increase bond portion, the $5 million?
So we have nearly exhausted all of the 2017 CIP sales tax that was targeted towards sidewalk gap. Just in the last construction bid that was awarded, I think we have about $500,000 or so, maybe $1 million left over. No, we haven't built that bench all the way to expend the $5 million. We were kind of working annual by annual programming amount that was available. We certainly will start building it now that we have more financial capacity coming our way.
And you probably, I shouldn't say probably, I'm wondering, you will encourage input from the council on areas that we see that may have not been on any list or any thought process, correct?
Well, the list is always evolving. So we get complaints about sidewalk gaps. We get feedback from yourself and the committee and the rest of the mayor and council. And we have an annual review of really the program's performance. Is it still doing what we intended it to do based on those prioritization factors that we collaboratively worked on to say, all right, we got plenty of demand and we got a limited amount of money, where do we want to put it? We work together to say, what is this kind of objective scoring criteria to pinpoint where we want to spend the funds? And then we come back to you at the end of the year before we go out to bid with the next section of sidewalk gap projects and say, are we still on track? Is this the right criteria, or do we need to make some changes?
Through the no tax increase bond, get out the information campaign, I actually talked to a few HOAs and, talked to 5. And out of that 5, 3, the questions were not about the no tax increase bond. It was about, we need sidewalks here. And I knew of one. I mean, it actually is in my neighborhood, but I didn't know about the other 2. And that's why I'm wondering, because all 3 of those are actually a need, And I don't know at what, on a scale from 1 to 10, what engineers would grade those at. But there's one that is very, very needed. And I mean, I saw that right off. So I just wondering, input from the council would be probably.
I think during that annual review process, but if you have a constituent that reaches out between now and then or any time of year, have them contact us so that we can get those notes into a service request. We can make sure that feedback's reflected in our review of project priorities. When all things considered, if you've got 2 equal scored projects and you got one where you've got a citizen advocate for it, I think we want to go put it in where the citizen is requesting it. A lot less likely that we get the opposition when they show up for construction in that case.
Right. Why are you digging my yard up? Yeah.
That was one of the evaluation criteria, was the public demand, when we factored that in. It's a component.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Ritz?
Chair, I wonder if it wouldn't be worthwhile, when we have maybe a light meeting, to have a review of the sidewalk gap program. And I don't know if you've been on this committee and seen that. I know Councilmember Pryor hasn't, but it's been a while since I've seen it, and it'd be good just to look at it and, so everybody understands it and gives feedback to it.
Sounds good to me. Find a time. Okay, any other questions from committee? I don't believe we require a motion for this, as we're just providing information. Thank you, Mr. Binger, for giving us feedback. I hope each of us look for a way to communicate that. And will we get emails with, the public comment period is open now, right? And so we just need to, if you could let us know as a committee where we need to go, just make it easy so we know it's here, it's online, and that way we can just push it back out. That'd be helpful, so. All right, so time for roundtable, and I know Mr. Parks already said he has a little bit to talk to us about, so we'll love to hear what you have to say.
Well, first, we were given a heads up on a question regarding sidewalk and I'm thinking sidewalk because we just talked for 20 minutes about sidewalk, about no parking up on Bingham Drive. So if Ms. Berry could address that question.
Good evening, Susan Berry, City Traffic Engineer. So this issue on Southeast Bingham Drive is by Highland Park School. Currently, there is parking restricted on the north side of Southeast Bingham Drive from Breon Bay to 160 feet east of Bingham Place, which is that first cul-de-sac. The problem originated back in 2015. At that time, the residents didn't think it was big enough to issue and they didn't want to pursue it. It came up again in 2017. At that point, the issue was that soccer practice was being held in the school, the back lot of the school. And rather than parking in the school parking lot, everyone was parking on that street because it's closer. There's a little sidewalk that goes between the two neighborhoods that leads right to the soccer fields. And so at that time, the school district and the soccer association worked together and alerted the parents, please don't park there. We might have to give up this practice facility if it continues. And at that point, I guess that worked for the spring season. And then in the fall season, we have a whole new group of parents, don't know to do that. And so the issue came back to us at that point. We had support from the neighborhood to restrict parking on one side of the road. It was chosen to do the north side of the road because of the fact that that way the kids weren't having to cross the street to get into their cars. And so we still allowed parking on the south side. That was done, that street measures 24 feet. And so the power of the city traffic engineer, if it's a safety concern, can restrict parking on one side of the street. And that's what was done at that time. And so that was actually done in 2019. The parking ordinance was changed in 2019. So here we are again. Councilmember Hodges had sent in some pictures. And in her pictures, they're lined up on the south side of the street. And there's one vehicle, I think, on the north side of the street. So that tells me it's an enforcement issue. If we were to move forward and restrict parking on both sides, we would have to do a petition of the neighbors. And that would have to, I don't know how to explain it. Basically, the adjoining property owners would have to agree to restrict parking because it does affect them. We can't restrict it certain hours of the day. Usually restricting it on one side of the street works just fine. So that's a little bit of the history. So to move forward, we would need someone to spearhead this issue. If one of the residents was adamant, they would have to be the driver behind the petition. They would have to go door to door and get the signatures. And since it was brought to us by a council member, I don't think the council member is going to go door to door. Anything to add?
Councilmember Tomorrow?
So, Ms. Berry, as I'm counting houses, we've got 3, well, I guess almost 4, and then 5, 6 houses. It would be specifically those 5 or 6 houses that would have to agree, and I mean, it couldn't be around the corner or anything.
No, it would actually be the ones on Bingham Drive. I think we'd take it all the way to Breon Bay, so there's that one on the south side that sits on Breon Bay.
Right there on the corner?
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's probably 5. I guess the other option is we could extend the limit on the north side. I don't know that people are parking on that side, though, that far to the east, because like I said, the sidewalk goes,
Yeah.
just down the tree line.
At times, and of course, the problem is when soccer practice is going on, the major time. I mean, I've been through there, and there's been parking on the side that is allowed right now. When there is soccer practice going on, there are people pulling into the no parking area to let kids out. With cars parked on the other side, it becomes very, very dangerous because the kids, they get out and run across the street, wherever, going to soccer practice. And a few years ago, this issue came up, and I actually brought it up. I mean, there's plenty of parking at Highland Park, and that's what was the predicate then. Just go to Highland Park and park. I didn't know that the residents had requested or had petitioned to have parking on one side, and that's where I kind of got caught off guard. But so simply, if those 5 or 6 houses, if they offer a petition to make it all no parking for strictly safety reasons, not personal reasons, it'd be safety reasons, then that could be actually looked at or considered, correct?
You're correct, yeah. We just don't want to take, that unilateral action against these property owners who may want to allow parking to happen, when we haven't seen a safety issue. There's a claim that there's parking on both sides of the street, you can't get emergency vehicle through. I think by restricting it on one side, we've alleviated that concern. But if they're willing to give up their parking, we'll bring forward an ordinance to enact no parking, so it's no parking on both sides, and the issue is permanently addressed.
So it's the one on Breon Bay and then 5 on Bingham.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I think I got it. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's Ms. Berry. Okay. Other matters for roundtable?
Yeah, congratulations to you all and to our staff on the April 4th ballot measure, overwhelming support, and I'm sure council will have more conversation about that tomorrow. Also, as you kind of alluded to, there's some big projects on tonight's agenda. Realizing over $33 million worth of projects on the agenda tonight. Kudos to Craig Kohler. I think that may be, at least to best of my recollection, the largest project we've ever awarded, and almost $26 million. I can't think of a bigger job, and he put a lot of work into that. In total, double than what we did last year already in one night. So a lot of work this summer, and please ask our residents to be patient because we'll have a lot of road closures and a lot of work going on, obviously. 2 other things, I just want to make sure we're clear on the public meeting. I did look it up. So the Douglas Street Improvements Open House meeting is Wednesday, April 19th. from 5:30 to 7:30, and it is in the Strother Conference Room here in City Hall. That's the conference room on the first floor across from Parks and Rec at the south end of the building. The other public meeting is a required meeting for the CLOMAR, which is a map letter revision for the flooding down near Secretariat. That meeting will be on April 26th, also a Wednesday, from 4:30 to 6:30, and that will be right here in the council chambers, also kind of an open house style format of a meeting. And then April 22nd is Earth Day and a Sweep the Summit event. We have a lot of activities happening on that Saturday. There's the city's Stream Clean event, and we're doing a very similar street clean event where we will be cleaning up corridors within the city's right-of-way or streams and city's parks. Recycle Fest is also that same day. Recycle Fest is 9 a.m. to noon out at the Public Works Operations Facility on Hamlin Road. That's an event, annual event, where I think the shredder is quite popular, but you can bring a lot of other recyclables. I got a long list. It's also on our website, but anything from golf balls to keys and corks and eyeglasses. Big recycling event with a lot of attendance. And I think police also has a drug take-back day on that same day on the 22nd. So a lot going on April 22nd. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but I just want to get that information out for everybody's awareness.
No judgment on the corks, right?
No judgment on the corks. On those two public meetings, there will be an online public comment place where you can go if you can't attend the meeting, but they won't be a hybrid meeting. It's just stop by if you can stop by, and if you can't make it, feel free to go online and make your comments, submit those.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Park. Councilmember Pryor's question?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to you, Michael Park, because I feel like you spearhead a lot. For so long, I feel like our city has been very reactive as far as infrastructure, and you're very proactive, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Looking to adjourn here. Thank you, Councilmember Pryor. Okay, yes, thank you, Mr. Park. Appreciate you and your team, everyone's efforts in putting these things together. That's probably an understatement. I don't think we probably realize half the work, not even a bit of the amount of the work that you all do to make these things happen. So, okay, well, no other comments from the committee. We will stand adjourned at 6:10.